My name is Abigail Elizabeth Marshall, and today is monumental for two reasons. One, this is my 27th wedding anniversary. Two, I just picked up the ashes of my husband. I knew this day would be difficult. I did not imagine it would be as bad as it has been. I am a forever romantic. I do not use the term hopeless romantic as most people do because I don't want to be hopeless in any situation. I grew up dreaming of marrying my Prince Charming. He would love and honor and cherish me, adore me forever. We would have beautiful children, a beautiful home, and all the trappings that went with my dream. Well, I got married. I do have two beautiful children. I have a beautiful home. I have nice cars. I have a successful career. I have all the trappings. What I did not get was Prince Charming. Oh, my husband was extremely handsome. So physically he fit the role of Prince Charming. But my husband was also a serial cheater. Part of the legacy from his family was being a cheater. I think he felt it was his God-given duty to master the art of cheating. And I suppose one could say that he did. During the first year of our marriage, I found out that he had never been faithful, not any time during our relationship. The first 10 years of our marriage, I spent blaming myself in some way. It had to be my fault. Most women do this. Even though you look at him and you like, he's just a dog. But deep down, you still think, what is it that I haven't done? What is it that I'm not doing? What is it that he needs that I can't give him? I think it's just normal. I don't know if men feel that way when they find out their wives are cheating, but I've never met a woman yet who did not in some way feel that she was responsible for the failure of her marriage. It took me a long time, and actually the first half of our marriage, to understand that it did not have anything to do with me. Now, I'm not saying I was perfect because I was not. There are certain things that I wish I could have done better. But it didn't have anything to do with whether or not he was running around trying to put notches on his belt or bedpost or penis. I don't know. Right midway, I finally figured out that I had two children, two beautiful daughters who needed me. I could not risk my husband bringing something home to me that I did not want. I know that sounds very basic, but it happens. It happens all the time. So our status changed. He was fine with it. He was not doing without as far as sex was concerned. He had enough women in his harem to choose anything he wanted to do. So he didn't have to look for them. They looked for him. And he loved it. Interestingly enough, we became even closer after we stopped pretending that we were soulmates. Just because two people get married does not mean they're soulmates. Just because two people get married does not mean that God put them together. I think we forget that, and not everyone has to agree. That's okay. Our friendship grew, our children grew, and time passed. It was interesting. He knew I knew about the women. He didn't care that I knew about the women. He was comfortable enough to take the women around his family. And most of his family were shady enough to let that happen. The only exception was his sister, who refused to participate in, well, the debauchery. I'll just put it like that. I have great respect for her for doing that. Last week at the funeral, as I sat there on the front pew, which is difficult enough all by itself, at first I thought about how pleased Xavier would have been. That's my husband, William Xavier Marshall II. Yes, he would have been pleased. There were two lines, one on each side of the pulpit, waiting to get to a mic to say lots and lots of wonderful things about him. The accolades were flowing, and he really would have loved that. What they were saying was true, because he was an exceptional man. As I said, he well, I don't know if I said it, but he was handsome. He was successful. He was naturally charismatic. He was very active in his community, and even more active in his church. He was a good father, depending on what your definition of that is. But he loved his children, so I don't want to be unfair with that. I listened to all of the praises and everything that goes with that. The funeral was expensive and elaborate and way too long. But as I said, he would have loved it. When it was time to view the body, I hate that term. It sounds so, weird. I watched the small parade of women pass by, shedding tears and wiping their eyes, touching the lapel of his jacket and smoothing back his hair. Each and every one grieving for my husband. So even though what the people speaking in the mic were saying was true about Xavier, what those ladies were saying without speaking a word was also true. He had a virtual harem. He would have been pleased about that too. Xavier did not care that his choices had consequences for other people, because you see, he never had to deal with any consequences himself. His mother sat there with a look that was very sad, because that was her baby boy. She was probably not too happy with me, because I did not shed a tear. I did not. I had already shed my tears for my husband throughout the 27 years of our marriage. A little bit less than a year ago, Xavier and I went to dinner. We did that sometimes. He didn't live at home all the time. Well, he lived at home, but he was rarely home. I think that that's a better way to put it. But we went to dinner and we were talking. I knew he had something on his mind, and he finally told me that he was ill. I was surprised because I hadn't noticed anything different about him. His weight usually went up and down because he was very much into fitness. He had to keep his image where it needed to be. I didn't see many changes. He didn't really want to go into great detail about what his diagnosis was, and I didn't push him. I think that's probably one of the things I should have been better at. I didn't push him about anything. Well, I'll have to reflect on that later, maybe. A couple of months passed, and I began to look a little closer. He was still losing weight more rapidly. His face was ashen. Well, I sat him down and I forced him to tell me what was going on. Very reluctantly, he had to admit to me that he had full-blown AIDS. I didn't panic at first because there's been so much progress made in the treatment of AIDS, and I know that. Well, I knew that. But I was angry because it didn't have to be that way. I knew that he did not practice safe sex, which is why I cut off the intimacy in our marriage midway. He hates the mere existence of condoms. So I know he would never use one, and the women he was dipping around in would not have forced him to. He was the pick of the litter. He was a notch on their panties. He was something that they were proud of. So no, if he didn't want to use a condom, that would have been fine with them. So yeah, I was angry because we have 2 daughters, and he didn't care enough about them to want to be around to see them fully mature into the women that they're going to be. They're young adults, but they're young adults. He will not see his grandchildren. Yeah, but Xavier was extremely selfish and self-centered, so that would never have occurred to him. By the time a few more months passed, I'll put it like that, and he was steadily getting worse, but he wanted to go to his visits and do all of those things alone, and I let him have that. But he finally was forced to tell me that he had stopped taking the drugs that would have helped him to live longer and live a better life. He let so much time pass that his immune system was shot. He had infection after infection after infection. And he basically passed away from complications from AIDS. That is the ultimate selfish act, because he just didn't care. You know why? Because he was angry. He was angry at God because, and this is not supposition on my part. These are his words. And he didn't have to tell me that because I know him. How dare God allow this to happen to him? I mean, this happened to other people, not him. How unfair was that? He went to church. He taught Sunday school. He paid more than the required tithe. I've always been convinced that Xavier was one of those people that genuinely felt that he could buy his way into heaven. So yeah, he was mad. He was angry. He was angry until he took his last breath. I tried to talk to him. I tried to pray with him. He was uninterested. Oh, he met with his pastor and he faked it out. But if he had looked closer into his eyes, he would have seen that he didn't mean the platitudes and stuff that he was saying. He didn't. He was too angry. I was with him when he passed. I'm thankful that I was. Maybe that's why I stayed. Because it was my choice to stay. I did not have to stay. I was perfectly capable of taking care of my children and myself. I was no longer in love with him. I hadn't been in love with him in over a decade, but I did love him. I wasn't interested in finding someone else to begin a relationship with. So I stayed. I felt that was best for my children. No, I'm not trying to say I'm a martyr, falling on the sword. Nope. That was it. I prayed about it. I had always taken my wedding vows serious. I'm not going to even say seriously. Just it was important to me. I meant every word that I said. Whether or not he did or not, that's on him. But I made the decision to stay. I do not apologize for that. Yes, I will have to have a very hard conversation with my daughters. I don't know if I harmed them in some way. I can only pray that I did not. I made a commitment and I stuck to it. No, I don't need a ticker tape parade for that. I think that's what you're supposed to do. Well, at least that's what I'm supposed to do. So I was glad to be with him. It was hard. His passing was hard, probably because he was so angry. So there was no relaxing and letting go and just going through the transition with as much calm and peace as you could come up with. Nope. He was angry. He had a DNR. It was almost like he did that because it's like, okay, what? You know what, God? I'll show you. You want me to die? Just take me. That's fine. And if that sounds dramatic, well, Xavier was dramatic. It was heartbreaking to see how hard it was for him, knowing that it didn't have to be that way. But it was. I stayed with him a while after the transition was complete. And I cried the entire time because I cried for what? I wanted it to be. I cried for what it wasn't. I cried for him and his spirit and his soul and how much he missed out on. He missed out on a wife who went into the marriage loving him unconditionally. But everything that happened, well, took it away. So even though I know his mother was not pleased with me because my eyes remained dry as I sat on that front pew, I really don't care, because I shed more tears for her son than I even want to think about. So because my daughters and I are not ready, I don't think we'll ever be ready to think about Xavier sitting on the mantle in an urn, I decided this morning that the third monumental thing that will happen today will be Xavier's return to his mother. He was her baby boy. He could do no wrong. And you know what? I'm not going to judge her because she's the mother. She has a right to do what she wants to for her kids. So that's on her. She was not pleased with the idea of him being cremated. But that's what he wanted, and I wanted to make sure that it was done. Everything was done exactly the way he wanted it to be done. So I will take him home. I will take Miss Gladys's baby boy home to her. Then I will turn the page and start a new chapter in this book that is my life. Will I ever trust another man again? I don't know. I hope so. I truly hope that I will be able to experience the type of love that I have always wanted. The type of love that I think every woman and man would like to have. So we'll see. I will always be a forever romantic.